Today's video is sponsored by Dice Envy. Dice Envy is an online dice shop that has a wide selection of dice that are custom made, high in quality, and I want to let you know that they're currently running a sale for mystery dice, a random set of their dice. It's only like $6. So if you want to check that out, go to diceenvy.com/Octavia, and I'll put a link right here and a card in the corner. And with that out of the way, let's jump into the video. Hello everyone, and welcome to an episode of 2CP, or 2 Copper Pieces, where I teach you how to play D&D and other tabletop role-playing games. Today's episode is about dice, and yes, dice. You may think of dice as just something you roll, but it's much more than that. They can be bold, they can be beautiful, sometimes they're weird. They all come in different shapes and sizes, made of all different materials, like resin, material, stone. With that out of the way, let's talk about the specific dice you need of Polyhedral Dice for D&D. And that is the D20, the D12, the D8, the D10, the D100, the D6, and the D4. The D20 is your bread and butter. It has 20 sides. As a player, this will decide your fate. Whether you love or hate that fate, the D20 decides. All of your ability checks, saving throws, initiative rolls, attacks, and so much more. I like to think of it as the die that facilitates all the other dice, so it is the decision maker. The D12 is your neglected cousin that you know exists, but might not really keep in touch with. The D12 is used a lot for barbarians, which is one of the classes in the player's handbook. It is also used for two-handed great axes, and that's pretty much it off the top of my head. A lot of people forget about the D12 because they don't really use it, and it's probably the least common dice to use out of all 7 pieces. The D8 is probably the most common dice in D&D other than the D6. It is used for most of the class's hit points. It is usually the most common dice for spell damage. I like the D8 because it has this irregular shape that you don't see in other dice. Sometimes it can be used to determine other effects, like the spell Chaos Bolt, where you have to roll in a table, and that's pretty much the D8. The D10 is a warlock's favorite dice for their favorite cantrip. Alone, the die reads from 1 to 10. It is also a paladin's hit points. It's even used for tables for certain spells like Confusion, or damage dice for spells like Inflict Wounds. And between this and the D8, I'd say the D10's a little bit less common, but still very prevalent in D&D. Usually, this dice can also be paired with the D100, otherwise known as Percentile. The D100, or Percentile Die, is essentially another D10, with double zeros being the highest and 1 being the lowest by itself. When you pair this with the D10, your rolls change. Depending on who's the GM, they might consider triple zeros to be 100. Me personally, I like to roll 0 to 99 because individually, that's what that each die singularly would represent, and I like to keep things the same. Also, it's used a lot for the Dungeon Master's Guide tables, so if I'm rolling for random features and traits, for instance, then that would be it. The D6 is a common dice used for spellcasters, especially for their hit points. Wizards and sorcerers, I'm talking to you. It's used for massive amounts of damage, like Fireball or Disintegrate. It's also used as the base die for weapons such as hand axes and hand crossbows. Finally, we have the D4. And also, depending on how you show this dice to, it's a caltrop. And don't step on those, they hurt. If they're made of metal, they will hurt your feet. These are unique die that don't really roll as well as the others, but they're just thin enough to bounce around, and different from what you see in front of you. The D4s may actually read from the bottom side instead of the top. As I said before, dice can be very weird sometimes. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed all the different kinds of dice, and I hope that this helps you get into the hobby, or maybe share some gratification for having at least 10 different dice sets and then taking pictures of them, recording them, and posting them on the internet. If you made it to the end of this video, I'd like you to answer me down in the comments below. What is your favorite dice set? I love to see all the kinds of dice people use, and who knows, maybe I'll look to add to my collection. So, thanks again, and I'll see you in a few days.